What are constraints in SQL? Hi, I am M. Asif Hussain from Knowhow Academy. In this video, we are going to see what are the different types of constraints we have in SQL, and we are even going to see what exactly each constraint is describing us about it. If I talk about the constraints in SQL, rather than directly explaining you with the technical word constraint, let me give you a very easy way of understanding the concept of constraints in SQL. It is nothing but a security. Constraints are nothing but it is a security. Okay, what kind of security? Let me give you an example. We all know and we all are working in a corporate sector, or we are students, or we are studying. We all have the Gmail accounts, we all have Facebook accounts, and many of them have this Amazon account, Flipkart account, okay, and various e-commerce platforms accounts and all. So my point here is that whenever we are creating an account in all these such as Gmail, Facebook or e-commerce platforms, what are the basic things that all these platforms ask us when we are trying to log in as a new customer? It will ask us our name, first name, last name, our email ID, our mobile number, our address, our date of birth. Okay, so all these informations, and few of the people they even ask into gender even, right? So now if I take my example, I am a customer. I am creating my new account in some e-commerce platform. Why does a e-commerce platform guy needs whether I am a male or female? Why does it require my gender? If I ask this question, yes it is. I have to ask it. He requires my email ID, my first name, my last name, my phone number, my contact details, my date of birth in order to give some offers, and they can even ask my card details for the purchase. They can even ask my house address, okay, pin code. All these things are required, that's fine. But why is gender required? So being a new customer, what will I do? I will avoid entering the details of the gender column. So now, in order to see this kind of scenario, I have just taken an example of a gender column where I am avoiding it because I am thinking that it is unnecessary for an e-commerce platform to know what my gender is. So for that, many of the customers, what they do, they leave it. They leave it empty. They do not enter any sort of information in it. So at that time, what I am going to do, I am creating a security. If I am creating in a database, I am creating using a constraint. What is that? I am mentioning in a backend part that no such column or no such information should be left blank by the customer. So for that purpose, constraint comes into the picture. Let me show you what are the different types of constraints we have in SQL. The first constraint I am talking about is not null. What is not null? Null, it means that empty. Blank. Not null means it should not be empty. It should not be blank. No such column, no such information should be blank. So it will not allow the null values. If you want to avoid that particular column by not entering any value, it will not make you allow that. Okay, because we have kept a not null constraint where you have to enter some sort of information in it, some sort of value in it for compulsory. So what is not null? Not null, it will not allow you the null values. It will not allow you the empty values. If I talk about the next constraint, unique constraint. In the name itself we have unique. So every information, every value that we are mentioning in a column should be different. No two informations, no two values should be same. For example, let me give you an example. I am logging into my Gmail account using some XYZ phone number. Now, some colleague or my friend also wants to log into Gmail account with the same phone number. So what am I doing? I am creating a security to the phone number column, mentioning that no two phone numbers should be same. So that's where I'm calling it in a SQL terminology constraint. I'm creating a constraint that no two values in a phone number column should be same. That's where I'm creating a unique constraint there, so that every phone number should be unique. So unique constraint. Every value is different. Next, if I talk about the primary key, okay, it's a very important question. The difference between primary key and a foreign key in SQL, I'm going to discuss it to you. So what is a primary key? When I am specifically talking about a primary key, it is a combination of the not null and unique values. Okay, so one table should have only one primary key. Based upon that primary key, we are relating the different tables that we have. Okay, so for example, using a customer table, I want to create customer table is my parent table now. Using that parent table, I want to create multiple child tables. So if I make you in a very clear understanding, one parent can have multiple children, right? In the same way, one parent table can have multiple child tables. So whenever I am creating a parent table, that parent table should have only one primary key. And that primary key is a combination of my not null and unique constraints. Okay, so that's where primary key comes into the picture. Again, when I talk about the another constraint that I have talked about is a foreign key. What does this foreign key will do? It will create the relationship between these two tables with the parent table that we have created. So using a customer table, I have created multiple child tables. So let me take customer table as A, which is my parent table, and I have created 3 child tables which are my X, Y and Z. So now A table is having the relation between these 3 child tables X, Y, Z. So what is the constraint that I have to use in order to create the relation between these two tables? That's where I use this foreign key. Foreign key, it is used to create the relationship between these two tables. Okay, so that is the primary key and foreign key that we have in our SQL as a constraints. Okay, primary key. Again, I am repeating, one table can have only one primary key. More than one primary key in a column, it is not allowed. Okay, so one column in a table, for a column you can have a primary key. All right, so if I talk about the another type of constraint, which is a check constraint. Check, in the name itself we have check. What is meant by check? So in order to check if the value that is satisfying the specific column, okay, it is whatever the constraint, whatever the information, whatever the data types we have given into our particular column, it will check whether those are satisfying the condition or not. So that's where check constraint comes into the picture. So very rarely people use check constraints. Let me next talk about the another type of constraint that we have is a default constraint. What is this default constraint? So let me take the same example that I have taken for the e-commerce platform. So in the e-commerce platform, when I have avoided giving the gender information, so when I check the database in the backend part, in the gender column, I will find that Asif Hussain and the gender is null, because I did not enter any value there. I have entered my first name Asif, I have entered my last name Hussain, I have entered my date of birth, I have entered my contact numbers, but I did not enter my gender. I have left it blank because I felt that it is not required for an e-commerce platform to know what my gender is. So in the backend part, if I see in the gender column under Asif Hussain customer, the gender is null. So now it is only one example I have taken. When we have the thousands and lakhs of records, then it is highly impossible to go and fill up each and every customer's gender there by, if you want to replace the null values with some gender, it is very difficult. So what should I get it? Rather than having some null value, so always remember, we should not have null informations when we are creating a analysis part for the data. So what should I do? If I should not have null value there, what should I do? What should I keep it when the customer is leaving it blank? You have to use a default constraint. So when a customer is leaving any column, rather than inserting the value in it, if they are leaving it, then we have to have a default value coming up, such as not applicable, unknown, NA, something like this. While we are creating a table, in the gender column, after we write our data type, we mention a constraint called default constraint. After you write the default constraint, you have to mention what name you have to get it when something is left blank, and by default what name you have to get it in a column. So that's where default constraint comes into the picture. It will set a default value for a column. So these are the constraints that we have in our SQL. We have not null constraint, where it will not allow any null values to have it in a column. We have unique constraint, where every value in a column is unique. No two values will have a same value. So another thing we have is a primary and foreign key, where we set up a relationship between these two tables or more than two tables, and we have check constraint, and it will satisfy and it will check whether every condition that we have given it is correct or not. Default constraint, it will set a default value for a column. Whatever the value we want to give it, we have to give it while we are creating a table itself. So these are the concepts of constraints or a security that we have it in a SQL. So how to write these constraints in a SQL query, that we will discuss it later on in the upcoming videos. So thank you for choosing Knowhow Academy as your source for IT knowledge. We are always here to help you to navigate the tech world. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out. It's been a pleasure sharing this information with you. Stay curious and keep learning.